Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha, and I'm continuing my discussion regarding the Persians and Iranians, right? So Persians, Iranians, that's synonymous. So I know it can sound bizarre, talking about a culture that you don't belong to. Obviously, I'm Nigerian American. I'm Yoruba. I'm black. I'm not Persian. I don't have any. I'm not married to a Persian person or an Iranian, but I'm a historian, and I'm also American. One of the beautiful things about living in America is it's a very cosmopolitan. Um, there are these cosmopolitan societies. So America's cosmopolitan. It's got virtually the globe. Everybody, every nation, every culture in the world is in America, and so I want to discuss how I got sort of really connected with Persians, right? Apart from the fact that I've lived with someone from Iran before. I've traveled with someone from Iran. I had friends in law school, but prior to that, I had actually worked with Iranians in a community in Boston, in Massachusetts. It was called Belmont, right? When I was a banker, so um, I worked in their neighborhood, right? In their neighborhood, and that was how I first got exposed to Iranians and Persians, right? So in Iran, sorry, Iranians and Armenians. So Armenians, of course, our most famous person of Armenian descent is Kim Kardashian, the Kardashians, right? Um, Armenians are an ethnic group within Iran, right? It's one of the ethnic groups within Iran. So um, there are multiple ethnicities in Iran. Of course, the majority are Persians, right? About 60%, 61%. But there are other groups as well, ethnic groups, Azerbaijani, Armenians, Arabs. Arabs are about 3%. The population of Iran is about 93 million. So when we say Arabs, about 3%. So they roughly over 2 million people then, about 2.7 million, um, that are Arabs in Iran. There are there prior to the revolution, on the eve of the revolution, there were 100,000 Iranian Jews in Iran. Um, Now they say very high estimates would peg their numbers to about 20,000, right? So it's got many different ethnicities. Of course, there are Kurds as well. Kurds constitute maybe 10% of the Iranian society. So I met a number of these multiple various ethnic groups when I worked in a place in Massachusetts, Belmont, where it's like an Iranian community. That's the thing about America, like many different nationalities tend to cluster. So from this, I learned that from them, from my Iranian clients, of course, I started to ask a lot of questions. I was a banker. I'm going to tell my story soon, but I learned that the place with the most Iranians, because this was a community in Massachusetts in Belmont that had a huge population of Iranians, right? I'd say 90% of my clients were Iranians, and Armenians or somebody married to them, right? So, but they let me know that the place in America that had the largest population of Iranians was actually in California, right? And so I read an article today, was it in the New York Post? And it was kind of interesting. And it was talking about um, Iranians in Tehrangeles, right? Because of course Tehran is the capital of Iran, and they live a lot in Los Angeles, so they call that area where they live Tehrangeles, right? So, and this article was claiming that Iranians in California were cheering the the decapitation of the regime, and were actually trying to, they were sort of egging on the Trump administration to go to war, right? And I saw another. So I have friends. I've been watching some of the things. Some friends have been saying, and some Iranians I follow on social media, and they were saying no. That yes, there are many Iranians in America actually, while they did not support the theocratic state, right? And many fled here to America because of that. This was what this article was saying. It was saying that most Iranians in America fled to America because of the Islamic revolution, and they constitute about 500,000 in the state of California. Now, this person was saying, well, while people didn't support, as she was born, the person, uh, that whose feed I, was, you know, listening to on social media, was saying that while she was against the Islamic uh, Republic, but she doesn't want war. She doesn't support the administration's bombing of Iran, because obviously they have family there. They have family in Iran. They have friends there. Of course, deep roots there. So they're going to be concerned, anxious about their families being killed, and many people have been injured. Many people have died since the decapitation and the onset of the war since February 28th. 28th, about 1,500 Iranians have been killed in Tehran, mostly in Tehran. There have been injuries, about 20,000 people reported injured, right? And there might be many more. There's now the toxic fumes from the explosions of the targeting, the strikes on the oil facilities that's now emitting, toxins, right, pollutants in the air, and these things can have long-term carcinogenic effects. And of course, the bombing of these amongst the oldest historical sites, right, in the world, because of course I've done videos explaining the great ancient civilizations of Iran, including the Achaemenid Empire of Cyrus the Great, right, from the 6th century BC, and so many others, right? So all these famous sites, historical sites, World Heritage sites, they're going to be destroyed. They're going to be subject to looting, just like it happened in Iraq, right? We have a history in Iraq of attempted regime change, decapitation, that just ends up destroying these old ancient civilizations. Iraq, I've been touting the civilization of Persia, right? Maybe because I've been amongst Iranians longer than Iraqis. I have one person who was a friend from Iraq, right? Just one person that I knew, and she also tell me so much about how she missed Iraq, how Iraq was so beautiful. She would tell me about the sophistication. So these are, nobody can ever be happy, living in exile and then, having to witness the destruction of their homelands, the beautiful homelands, or their family. It doesn't even matter if it's not beautiful, but you still have these memories that you savor, from where you once called home, right, or where you still consider to be home. And so there's this emotional connection, the bond that you can't break, that shouldn't be dismissed. So it's one thing to want a terrible government, or whatever it is, a government to leave, but it's another thing to wish war against your own people, against your homeland, because it's going to be destruction. Many people are going to die. Will it ever be put back together again? Afghanistan, it was a Sisyphean task there, because we were there for 20 years only to leave for the Taliban to come back. The Iraq invasion it now created ISIS. What's going to happen in Iran, right? But however, Iran is different. If we ever set foot there, I've done videos, and my analysis, right? Iran is more complicated. It's bigger, and these people have been waiting for a very long time. They're hardened. I think it would be the beginning of the unraveling, the destruction of America, right? I did a video talking about how Napoleon went to invade Russia, and that was the beginning of the end of the French Empire and him. It destroyed his military. He took in 600,000 soldiers into Russia. The terrible terrain, the devastating weather of Russia dealt with him, and they were waiting for him. That was what they planned. They let him, was like an unforced error. An unforced error, for people who watch tennis or play tennis, an unforced error is one which your opponent does not, it's a point your opponent did not obtain from what they did, but you lost it from an action or mistake or something you did wrong, right? And this is where we will be. This is where we're headed in terms of, if there's an Iran invasion, we can always go withdraw and stop this. And I think that's what America needs to do. They need to withdraw and just stop it right there and rebuild our own society and build our own society up, and not walk into this snare, this quagmire. It will be different from Iraq. It will be different from Afghanistan. Because one, we're in a precarious situation in terms of our economy, the debt we've piled up, and this is just a different opponent. They're going to be using asymmetric warfare, and their allies are China, our main rival in the world, and then there's Russia. So they're going to receive support from these people. Apart from the fact, if we don't get into a third world war, because it will be nuclear, but America won't be able to use nuclear weapons on them because they have people who will help them get nuclear weapons. If they don't already have it, or if they don't build that capacity before that. There's China, there's Russia, and then there's Pakistan, their neighbors, who have nuclear weapons. Pakistan has the second largest population of Shia Muslims, right? Apart from Iran, right? That's the sect of Islam, the strain of Islam which they practice and which the Iranians lead, the rest of Shia Muslims in the world in. So it's a very complex scenario. I've done videos discussing the complications regarding invading Iran. So right now I want to talk about how they helped my success, how I worked with them. So I, almost 20 years ago, I was a banker. I moved to Boston, Massachusetts, and I was a banker. I worked as a personal banker, small business specialist, and a private banker, because I was a wealthy neighborhood, one of the wealthiest neighborhood areas in Massachusetts, and they were made. The people who lived there were Iranians, so I learned about the Iranian community, and they wanted to see me succeed, and they were very courteous, and so I interacted with them every day. Billionaires lived around there, very ultra wealthy people, and they'd walk in and they'd come into my office and they'd have conversations with me. They're very interesting, and I learned a lot from them. I learned about Armenia, and of course, because I can't say who it was, but like very important people would walk into my office talking with me. Of course, because of banking, I can't, the confidentiality of banking, I can't say who it is, and I wouldn't even say which the bank or the name of the bank, but it was one of the top 3 banks, right? And it was a wonderful experience for me. So I ended up getting promoted within 6 months of starting, right? And I became a full-scale financial advisor, stockbroker. I was promoted, and I went to work into in high net worth, right? Ultra high net worth clients. And that's because of the tremendous support success that the Iranian community gave me. So I remember though I had an interaction with one client. Right, there was one client. There was just one client that I thought he was a jerk because he seemed to be antagonizing me. Right, so he was born in America. He was Iranian. I don't know if he was born in America because you know not young. He was in his 40s at the time. Oh, I guess he could have been born in America. He was in his 40s at the time, 30s. He spoke with an American accent, and he'd schooled all over Europe, in Switzerland, all these elite whatever. He was a psychiatrist. When I look back now, I think he may, I guess because of his profession, he was a psychiatrist. He was probably just baiting me, and they probably just want to basically analyze everybody. So maybe he was trying to psychoanalyze me, but he was intentionally antagonizing me, like talking down on me. He was a psychiatrist. He schooled in these elite schools in Switzerland. Um, and everything I do, he sort of criticized. And of course, he's my client, and my job is to be pleasant with him and everything. Uh, but he wanted to almost try and make me seem like, oh, I'm an idiot, you know, which was bizarre. But he came back later. Later on, he was now very polite with me, and he was very friendly with me. So it makes me realize that okay, he was probably because he was a psychiatrist. That was his profession. He may have been trying to see okay if this person is cool. But in any event, all the whole community, Iranians, they were showing me so much love, and I ended up being the number one banker in the whole New England market. Right, I was the number one banker. Now you can imagine. I wasn't from the area. I wasn't white. If you go to this area, Belmont, what you're just gonna see is you're gonna see white people, right? White or Asian people. If you see people not white, they're Asians, right? So Iranians mostly live there. So and here I was, this black person working there, um, and it supported my success. Now I have an interesting story, right? So once in a while, there was a black lawyer who walked in, and this person didn't even want me to see their accounts and the person was a lawyer. He was an elderly, middle-aged lawyer, but he came just looking at me suspiciously, as if I stole something. Like the look he had, the way he was looking at me, like he was about to ask me to open my pockets, to pull out my pockets. Or maybe I got money, I've stolen something, the way he was looking at me suspiciously. So that was a terrible experience, but I'm a pleasant person. That was part of my job. To be pleasant, right? And to be unfazed, by any rudeness. And then there were these Africans. I'm not going to say what country, right? They weren't Nigerians. There was never a Nigerian in that area at the time I was there. So, but these are the few black people that I came across in this area, right? And there was these, they were wealthy from East Africa. I'm not going to say what country. And I had this great rapport with them. And I was going to try and make them my clients and everything. This great rapport. They acted, they're so friendly. They're happy to see me, but they would not even let me see their account. They would not, they just avoided me and all of that. And you see, these are Africans, so they're blacks. So it's kind of funny that, and maybe it's from all the negative information that maybe government agencies intentionally disseminate against maybe Nigerians to beware of them, and so it makes Africans. It's sort of a way to divide them. I don't know, but think about it. Iranian Americans didn't look at me suspiciously like that. They gave me their business. They brought me their business. I remember there was one person who actually gave me a card that I should apply to wanted to connect me to banking jobs in Dubai, right? That I should go there. I'd make so much money, blah blah blah. Investment banking, but of course I said no. There was at one time somebody came to me, who was at another bank, and it was an Arab, was a wealthy Arab guy, and he liked talking to me, was pleasant, and after he checked me out, he came back. He wrote a check cash, transferred money, $500,000 in cash, and he said he wanted me to manage it myself. There are other people like that. They would come, know they want me to manage their portfolio, their accounts directly. Iranian community, they were so pleasant to me. But you don't get that same experience with other Africans, right? Other Africans tend to be suspicious. Now think about it. I was virtually like often the only black person in an entire neighborhood, right, of white people. The Iranian American clients I dealt with, they were smart enough, intelligent enough to think that, okay, this major bank in America hiring this black guy in this wealthy white neighborhood, whatever, he must be exceptional. They've checked him, they've done everything they need to do to put him here because it will be a damage to their reputation. And so this person is exceptional, and that because of that, they want to leverage my skills. They want to utilize my skills that this bank, this major bank, right, has taken up. They're betting their money on me, but because it could damage their reputation, right? So they know I've been vetted. They believe I must be exceptional to be a black person to be here. I must be exceptional. But unfortunately, other black people, when they come across, they think, well, this was my experience, in this Belmont, whatever. There are hardly blacks there. Again, it was just two, a East African couple who was wealthy, and then this, other black man who was a lawyer, middle-aged man. But they were very suspicious when they saw me. They were extremely suspicious that they thought something was wrong. They didn't think about it. They didn't see things the way these Iranians who took a chance with me and who helped my success, right, gave me their business. They didn't think about it that, well, this person must be exceptional to have been placed in this position by this major bank, right, amongst these ultra high net worth, important clients. At one time, I was moved out. I was partnered. When I became a private bank, I was now partnered with a Russian doctor who became a banker, right, a wealth manager, and she was a trained medical doctor, and so I went to there's a Russian community again, right. By the way, again, Russians and Iranians, they have a close history, right, because they're neighbors, right. The Persian empires, Persia, Iran, neighbors. What was the Russian Empire, right? So, and this person partnered with me, and would bring me business as well. So it was funny how it was easy for me to garner success amongst non-black people in banking, right? Of course, I left banking about 18 years ago, a long time ago, and I decided to go to law school. I went to do other things, but so you can see my interest in, apart from the fact that I'm interested in history, but because I've had personal relationships, interactions with Iranians as clients. I've lived with them as in the same house. I've traveled with them, and so I've gone to school with them, but they were my clients. And one major success I had in my banking career was because Iranians supported me. They gave me their business, right, in the Iranian community. And that was when I started to learn about Iranians, the differences between Iranians and Persians, between Iranians and Armenians. By the way, regarding Armenians, I had an Armenian colleague, by the way, a co-worker who was Armenian. the first Armenia had the first Christian state. Anyway, my name is Ulurotimi Osha. I'm going to stop this here, and I will keep you posted. Thank you. And the music playing, by the way, is I've mentioned this in other videos I've done. That is by an Iranian German, right? An Iranian German, Ramin Jawadi. Awesome music. That's the theme song for Game of Thrones, and it's sort of, I like playing it in the background. Of course, he also composed the theme song for Iron Man, which, the one, what's his name, Robert Downey Jr. did. Anyway, I'll keep you posted. Thank you.